I have learned so much. Thank you for teaching me. As a teacher, I appreciate opportunities to learn, and I hope that I can teach you something today. I hope that you will learn with me. So, Bo asked me to answer 3 questions, hence the syllabus. Question number 1 that we are going to answer: how can we make school reflect real life? Number 2 on the syllabus: how can we encourage learners to be seekers and explorers? We are learners. Our children are learners. How can we make them seekers and explorers? And number 3, because you can only teach 3 things in any one given time, like everybody will tell you that when you're doing a talk. Number 3, how might we inspire each other in the world, in the broader world, through our work? So, starting with question number 1. Number 1, how can we make school reflect real life? So I wanted to answer that question and teach about that question. And the question that I asked myself, because I'm in research, a question always leads to a question. What does real life actually look like for Gen Z? Because these are the students who are in school now. What does real life look for them? And I thought about the other day. I asked my son to go to the dining room and grab the tablet. And that's what I had in my mind. And you know that he came back with that. Of course he did. And I had my pen ready, and he was like, what are you going to do with the pen? Like, why? I'm like, oh, of course, I should have been very specific. The piece of yellow paper on the dining room table. And I think about when I talk about chatting with friends. I actually go to Starbucks and talk to people that I know. And we call it chatting. But Gen Z, they think about, oh, you chat with someone. This is what you do. You sit at a computer and you type and you talk and there are bubbles, and that is chatting. And similarly, just when I think about friends in general, my friends are this group of people that I know intimately, that I see at their best and at their worst, who are beautiful to me in all of their non-beauty. But I know that for my kids and for Gen Z, you have lots of friends in this space, in this portal that you can reach, and they're all over the world, perhaps. But the point is, I am a technology translator. Gen Z, they are technology natives. They've never known the writing tablet and the chatting where you talk to people. So how can we make classrooms reflect that? Well, we talk to our students about the dangers of social media and the perils, and don't do dumb stuff on Facebook. It will haunt you forever. But do we also train our students to create amazing electronic portfolios? Do we teach them that instead of, or in addition to, having a paper trail of all of the work that you do in your classroom, put it on a Weebly site, put it on a Wix site, put it on your LinkedIn profile, put it on your Instagram, tweet it, snap it, pin it, post it, but do things with it so that you are creating this really cool digital image, so that the negative stuff takes care of itself, because that's not what we're focusing on. We're not telling them what not to do. We're saying that really cool science fair project where you study the brain, the sheep's brain, or anything that you looked at, dissect that, take pictures of it, and then explain the skill set that you got from it. Because as a faculty member, believe it or not, that's actually what I want to see. Recruiters are looking at LinkedIn. Do you really think that admissions boards are far behind? No, they are not. Something else that is quite relevant to Gen Z, and this is from multiple marketing research firms that you've also heard about in the past. They have grown up in the recession, the big housing bubble burst. They've seen the uncertainty of jobs being lost, of pensions being lost, and they actually want stability. Guess what? Not gonna get it. Not gonna happen, because just like the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that 65% of the jobs that Gen Z undertakes haven't been invented yet, you know what else? They're gonna have 15 different jobs over the course of their work history. And within those 15 jobs, they're going to have 7 different careers. So not just jumping from one position to another every 2 to 3 years, but actually changing an entire focus of their goals. which is huge. So you have to prepare them for that in the classroom. And what does that look like? In the lower grades, perhaps it is just studying cause and effect. If A happens, then anticipate what is going to happen next. And as our students become more mature, teach them the purpose of a linear regression. Teach them the purpose of just a straight line. Y equals mx plus b. What does the slope mean? How does it help you predict what is going to happen next? If you are in film and that's your bread and butter, when digital stuff comes on the scene, make a pivot. If you are in driving as your industry, or if you're in hospitality, you're in the hotel business, look at what's coming. Don't just let the future run you over so that now you're looking for a job when Airbnb runs you out of business. Or can you just recognize that you need some additional training because this is where the market is going, this is where the industry is going. We can teach that skill set in our classrooms. And the other thing that our students need to be aware of, you see this graph? I'm an engineer, I had to put a graph because you just do, okay? You have your X, you have your Y. On the Y-axis, the dependent variable, we have the percentage of students being accepted into your top colleges. And on the X, we have time. So that independent variable, time. And do you notice this huge downward slope? Everything is just plummeting down because we started out with so many students being accepted into your top schools, and now we're looking at 10%, 5%, 3%, even Georgia Tech. We used to accept 65% of our applicants, and now we accept a quarter. And then you have schools like Harvard, who accepts 3 to 5% on any given year. And these started out accepting much more. So you have a 3% chance of getting into quite a few schools. What does that mean? We need to compare our students. We need to prepare our students to compete because their world, their real life is a lot more competitive than our real life. I'll be honest with you, if I applied to Georgia Tech now, I wouldn't get in. I am so thankful that I went on and got my degrees and did what I had to do, because if I had to compete with that 3% there, I'm pretty sure they would laugh me out. Like, how dare you even fill out an application and submit it, okay? So we have to prepare them, but that means not only teaching them that it's okay to compete. Not everybody wins. Not everybody gets the participation trophy. You don't get participation admission. You really have to win. But also, no, the participation trophy, okay? But also, when and where and how do you compete? Be strategic. I could have chosen to compete in basketball, all 5 feet of me. I could have, yes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to compete, and I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to try, and I'm going to practice, and I probably would not have gotten a basketball scholarship. It is safe to say that. So I chose to compete in electrical engineering. Being a Black woman, that helps me. I promise that was on purpose. I looked around, and I said, there are not a lot of people who look like me who are trying to do that. And so when I applied for scholarships, yes, I checked that box every single time. Black, female, it's all optional. It's not optional for me. You need to know. I need you to pay for me to go to school. That's it. And so when I do research in this area, I see people who give scholarships to red-headed Jewish children with moles on their left cheek. If that's what you have, that's where you need to compete. Yes, do that. So we can help our students in that arena, because it's only going to get more expensive and more competitive over time. So that's where we have to help them focus their efforts. Question number 2, how can we encourage our learners to be seekers and explorers? So I asked myself that question. What makes me a seeker and explorer? Why on earth did I spend so many years of my life in school? Why? This is what I thought about, okay? I had a job that looks like this. This is just a basic Outlook calendar. Every color is a meeting for a different project. I had a job just like that. It was Intel, I promise. It's a great company. That was my job at Intel. Meeting. I go to one meeting and I sit and I listen. And I go to another meeting and I sit and I listen. And then I go to a meeting and it's a longer meeting and I sit and I listen. I went to one meeting for an hour and a half about a spec. that was 1/100th of a hair too big. You take a hair and you split it 100 times. Promise you, not seeking and exploring about that. I couldn't just say, I don't care. So what I did, I got another job. That's what I did, because I had that choice, thankfully. But then we look at our students who have a similar block schedule, and they go to one place, and they sit, and they take notes, and they go to another classroom, and they sit, and they do the same thing. But unfortunately, a student can't say, I don't care, I want another job. They can't. They have to actually sit there and learn. And heaven forbid you have something like that. Like, that's real. That's, oh my goodness. That I just had to laugh and just show that because it made me really sad. Just a whole bunch of crap. So, no, they're not seeking and learning in that environment. And of course, we could argue that in the lower grades, we have to give them the tools, yes. But there's a certain way that we can go about it, a different approach. The first thing is explain why. Just the why. Why really matters in the lower grades, in the mid grades, in the upper grades. Like my son came to me, we had to learn. I said, baby, we need to work on 3-digit subtraction. And of course, he's 8 years old. He says, why? Mom, why? I already had the test on that. Why do I need to learn that? So, well, first of all, you didn't do well on the test. We're not having that. But that aside, so you know what? Your money has 3 digits. $5.50. That's what you get for your allowance. And if you don't know how to add and subtract your money, people will always be able to take advantage of you. No matter if you won't even know what you have. I could go into your piggy bank and just take stuff. You wouldn't even know it. So, oh, okay. So now at least his brain was open to us, having this conversation, him learning that. So explaining the why makes a huge difference. Why am I learning differential equations? Why am I learning? I still don't know why I learned Maxwell's equations. I really don't. If I could kick Maxwell, I would. But it might be why am I learning poetry? Why am I learning history? Why? Just explain it. And then put it in the bigger context. Fill in the pieces of the puzzle. How does this look in the greater context of life? Give you another example. I was talking to a colleague who is so passionate about environmental justice. Environment and justice, 2 great things. I'll be honest with you. I was like, I want environmental justice. It sounds good, but I can't rally behind that. I can't. So he said, okay, well, let me explain to you how it fits into the bigger picture. Let's take parks, for example. You like parks? I like parks, beautiful green space. Okay, they're cute. I like parks. You play in them, they're cool. But then he explained to me, he said, did you know that parks and green space actually clean the air? So the ground absorbs water from, really thunderstorms and all these things. So when you have an area with no green space, you have a much higher percentage of pollution. You have more mold and bacteria in the air because the trees aren't there to cleanse it. And just the quality of life in general is worse when you don't have green space. And so just putting it in that context, I'm going to his seminars now. I'm sending my students to his classes. Environmental justice, it makes life better. We can breathe because of environmental justice. Do it. So and I'm an adult, let alone, if I can't get behind it without understanding the ramifications in the greater context of the world, surely our high school students, our college students, our middle school students aren't going to get it if we don't show them. And after we do that, the next thing is involve them. I like this quote. Ben Franklin, tell me and I forget. I have forgotten a whole lot of things that were told to me. Teach me and I remember, yes, but involve me and I learn. And to involve the student, give them the concept and then make them make it their own. Something that I do in my classes, I teach circuits for non-majors. You cannot inhabit 500 more uninterested students. It's my class size every semester. It's required, and it is for non-majors. So if you are an electrical engineer, you can't take this class. So one of the things that I do, I teach them a concept, and then I force them to apply it to their major. So figure out, how does this apply to what you do? You're an aerospace engineer, what does this mean? If you're a mechanical engineer, what does this mean? And all of a sudden, they start to get it. And then I find that they actually start seeking and exploring these concepts in their own areas, and they want to apply it to what they're learning. So just understanding the why and understanding the how it fits, and then understanding that this is interesting to me. You know, maybe you have a student who is really into the arts. What on earth does math have to do with the arts? You know, I've told students who I talk to who would much prefer to write a paper, math is the most beautiful language that you will ever write. It is infinite. It's a study of no beginning and no end. And if you look at it that way, it is poetic and it's beautiful. And can you find the beauty in these numbers? The fact that letters can represent numbers. The fact that you can actually borrow from stuff that's not there. Like, come on, blows your mind. It's like, and then all of a sudden, okay, they get it. So this is, instead of that picture with all of the stuff on the board, I like this. These kids are engaged, and that's what we want, not just in the lower levels, but also in high school and everywhere. And this is just an aside. When I was a student, the worst part of being in school was having to sit. I don't know if you all, maybe you noticed that I move nonstop. And when I got to high school, I had a teacher who would let me stand in the back of the class, and it changed my world. So just throwing it out there, if you are an educator, just being able to stand and move around. And she would let me stand in the back as long as I didn't disturb others, which I didn't. Got an A in her class, it was great. So just being able to command space and not having to sit because, it feels like a prison sometimes. And just letting students do that makes a huge difference. Third question, how might we inspire each other in the broader world, what we undertake? And my advice, threefold. Number one, recognize that we are all connected, meaning I don't have the answers. Everybody is valuable. Everybody contributes. Two, listen. Oh, my goodness, listen. I can't come in to solve your problem. I can't solve your problem. We can work together to create a solution, but listen. This quote says, I remind myself every morning that nothing I say today will teach me anything. So if I'm going to learn, I must do it by listening. So let's just listen. And third, include everybody. That's it. Like, actually, if we want to inspire each other in the work, actually involve each other in the work. I want to tell you one story, and then I'm going to go and sit down and move like and shake in my seat. Okay. So my students had this project with a set of orphanages in Eastern Asia. Very rural orphanages who had a disproportionately large number of kids with disabilities, very severe disabilities. And it's not that the population has more, but these kids end up in orphanages because the parents can't take care of them. So the caregivers are completely overwhelmed, and they're feeding the babies lying flat on their backs. Can you imagine eating lying flat on your back? It's very painful. The children were actually slowly starving to death because they had pneumonia, chronic drowning. Like, it's just awful. And it wasn't that the caregivers didn't want to sit them up. They just couldn't. They were just overwhelmed. There's too many of them. It's not like you, and these are bigger kids. You can't just sit them up. One of the kids, the worst case, this child was 8 years old and weighed 11 pounds. I didn't even know that an 8-year-old could sustain life at 11 pounds. My very voluptuous 4-year-old weighs 50 pounds. And yes, I said voluptuous, not fat. 50 pounds. So these caregivers were working with them through a partner, and they say, really what we need are chairs. So we talk to them and ask questions. Okay, like chairs? Like, you don't have chairs. And they actually had a whole collection of high chairs. The high chairs were sitting in a corner collecting dust. And the reason is, in these cultures, people eat sitting on the floor. And so the assumption that so many people make is, you just need chairs, here's a chair, without taking the time to listen and just ask the question, well, what kind of chair do you need? It's a very simple follow-up question. So they had these beautiful high chairs that were collecting dust that they weren't using, and the kids are starving to death being fed on the floor. And so after talking to them and listening to them and working with them, my students and I designed floor seating chairs where the caregiver could sit on the floor and feed the child while the child is sitting on the floor, eye level to the caregiver. And we made it from materials that are found local to the sites. And that made all the difference in the world because they helped us to design what they needed. And then all they needed was one. They made one, we made one. We gave it to them, very simple to put it together. It puts together with absolutely no screws, that's an engineering challenge. It's like IKEA furniture with nothing. Like you don't even need a tool to put it together. It was really cool. And then they got their uncles and their cousins and other people in the community to go out and replicate the chairs. And so they were involved and inspired in the work because they were part of the work. So that's what we do. We listen to each other, we value each other, and we involve each other after we do all of these other amazing things to keep our students excited, for our classrooms to accept and reflect real life, and for our students to be seekers and lifelong learners. And yes, so this is what we do. And thank you all so much for paying attention to me.